first of all, I would like to welcome everyone in our session today. So today we are talking about quality models in requirements engineering. And I'm very happy that all of you participants have joined, have spared your schedule for this hour, for this, I think, very nice and lively discussion that we will have. And I also would like to welcome our panelists, Martin Glinz, Eddy Groen, and Andrea Wohlgemuth in our session. I think with our panelists, we have really experts for today's session when discussing about requirements engineering, and especially quality models for requirements engineering. And so I'm happy to have you all here. So maybe some short topics for the participants. So you are welcome at every time to set your questions in the chat. So I will try to moderate them to the panelists during our session. The session will be recorded, and the recording will be available via YouTube approximately in 1 hour from 1 week from now. So probably by end of next week. This session will be available on YouTube. I will inform you, or at least everyone who is registered to this event afterwards, as soon as the recording is live. And I will be happy if you share the recording in your network and with your colleagues and everyone who's interested in this topic. So that's first, I think, all from my side. Then I would love to hand over to introduce our panelists. Maybe Andrea, can I start with you?
Yes, so welcome also from my side. My name is Andrea Wohlgemuth. I'm software strategy consultant at Swisslog. We are providing intralogistics solutions, and I'm a computer scientist with 15 years and experience in the logistic domain for different competitors, working for Fraunhofer in requirement engineering for project selection in a very early stage of the requirements at the end, and later on in different supplier companies responsible for requirement engineering aspects. And my interest is always applicability of requirement approaches in industry, how to use models like quality models in our setups.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. Eddy, do you want to proceed?
Yes, okay. Glad to see so many people who have come, also some that we know. My name is Eddy Groen. I am an engineering psychologist by trade. And after finishing my studies, I first worked as a quality manager for 2 years. Then I moved to Germany and started working at the Fraunhofer Institute for Experimental Software Engineering in Kaiserslautern, where I'm working on the topic of requirements engineering. But that basically means that we're doing designs for complex systems such as digital ecosystems. With qualities, aside from obviously the quality management work that I've done with ISO 9001 and also in the medical industry with GAMP, or in the Swiss rehab clinics with the Catedo standard, I've also been working on, for example, quality models for complex systems such as IoT systems, and I'm currently working in a research project called DACOR, where we're basically conceiving a rather complex and extensive holistic quality model, which includes a criteria catalog.
Perfect. Thank you, Eddy. Martin, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Zurich, and with an IREB, I am chairing the IREB Council. Well, I've been interested in requirements engineering for something like, well, almost 40 years now. And more recently, we got, well, rather interested in quality models for requirements engineering, particularly figuring out when we did the renovation of the CPRE foundation level, that it is not so easy with quality models. Also, everybody says, well, that's useful, that the existing quality models have major issues, and that it's not so easy to actually apply them. And well, this roundtable is one of the things where we try to shed light on, well, what is a quality model and what can we do with quality models in IREB.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. Thank you all. And I think this is, as already mentioned in the beginning, a nice roundtable on discussing about quality models and requirements engineering. What is the use of quality models? What is the application? And what is also interesting for us during this session, I will ask also the participants if they are already using quality models, what do they see maybe are, let's say, needs, especially in quality models that they represent, and all these aspects I would like to discuss today with our panelists. So maybe let's start with the, let's say, more or less quite obvious question. So what are quality models in requirements engineering and what are they used for? Martin, do you want to start? And you provided some slides. Shall I share them directly?
Yeah, I'm trying to share them, but I have no idea whether it works.
If not, I can do it.
So it basically says you are sharing a window, but I don't see anything. Okay. So I'm afraid that you have to share it because it doesn't. Okay, so this is actually a slide about, well, where do we think what a quality model could be. It's basically the idea that we have something like a structured set of characteristics and sub-characteristics of these characteristics, so that when we take them together, we get an idea of what the quality of the overall thing is. And this overall thing is typically, when we talk about requirements, a system or a product or a service or something like that. And with quality, we mean obviously what we do in requirements engineering, that very generally speaking, it's a degree to which we are fulfilling requirements, and a bit more specifically, the degree to which our system satisfies those stated and implied needs of the stakeholders. So what's important with the quality model, that it should come with definitions of all the characteristics and sub-characteristics, so that we get a kind of consistent terminology among all the stakeholders and also between the stakeholders and the developers. That's an asset in itself. And it should come with things like templates or measurement procedures, application guidelines, examples, whatever, that provide us something like, well, a guidance for eliciting, for documenting, and for validating requirements when we talk about requirements engineering. And maybe we can also take the next slide. Well, why do we want to have quality models in requirements engineering? That has been done, well, actually for a long time in IREB, and it does matter because it helps us with supporting elicitation, with validating requirements, and also structuring work products. And however, that's the next thing, the existing models do have major issues, such as that we have modern characteristics, for example, sustainability or privacy, that are just missing from today's quality models. That in the ISO model we have this flawed distinction between quality in use and product quality. That makes a lot of problems. We have, for example, in Volere, an inadequate top-level separation of functional and non-functional requirements. And there is not much hope that the existing standards will provide major improvements in the next years. And so what we are asking ourselves is, can we do better? That means, would it be possible to design a quality model that would work better for requirements engineering than the currently models do, and what would that be? That means, what does industry really need? And what can we, what insights do we have? What can we provide from an academic side? Can we differentiate it somehow? That it's on the one hand side simple enough so that beginners are not overwhelmed and stay away. And on the other hand, that when somebody uses it as a professional, that those people don't say, wow, that's too simple, that is not enough for what we need as professionals, so that it can be rich enough. And well, obviously, are there any steps that we should go toward that model in terms of kind of roadmap? Yeah, thanks. I think I should not monopolize this, so maybe we should stop at this point with sharing and, well, ask the industry about what does industry need.
Exactly. So, Andreas, what's your opinion?
So what does industry need? Of course, industry differs from the industry you are looking at. In my case, we are working in a context where we have mechatronic solution and software solution combined, which means a lot of people are involved, and visibility of quality aspects in requirement engineering is quite important. So first of all, naming of quality aspects is important to make it visible and to make sure that we consider them. The other aspect is that quality requirements are point of contractual appointments between us and our customers. They are related to penalties, like availability in a warehouse. Do we provide processes in the capacity, in the availability that was aligned up front? What is about performance in the setup? What is about security aspects? All these can or might be, dependent on the project, related to penalties, so becomes a high relevance for us as industry. Our challenge is how to adapt existing models, and are they really suitable for us? From my point of view, it's more about using them as inspiration and to pick out whatever you need for your context, review it carefully and add what is additionally needed. Like in our context, performance, availability, safety, security, and also recovery setups. So requirement for recovery.
Okay, perfect. Eddy, is there anything, let's say, you're in between research and practice? So something from your point of view, you have experience, you can add what is the need and the reason for this kind of quality models.
Right. Well, what we mostly see is that if companies use quality models, they use it mainly for three things. First is prioritization. So you have to know which qualities are there, and you have to choose which ones you find most important, because it's very hard to address them all, and especially sometimes it's impossible actually to address one perfectly and the other one then as well. The standard example of that is security versus usability. Also, of course, completeness, because you do want to at least take some decisions about the ones that you don't prioritize very highly. And the third one, of course, Andrea actually mentioned, is also the organization. And of course, that also helps. I mean, the best examples that I've seen of good architecture documentation is also where they use these qualities to organize the material, which helps me as a requirements engineer, but definitely also helps the developers. So this combination of aspects is necessary for us to work with, and that greatly improves the projects. Of course, I can also support what Martin said from the research side. That's also what we're noticing. These standards that we are working with, for example, the predecessor of the ISO 25010 standards, was first proposed in 1991, and it has seen some changes, but it doesn't reflect, I would say, today's requirements. And it's also the ones that Martin showed on his slides, or the ones that Andrea mentioned. So things like sustainability, explainability, but also safety. Those are things that we need today. And if these ISO standards don't include them and they are not changed in order to reflect the status quo of today and not of 1991, I think we have a problem.
True. So I'm curious a bit now on our participants. So what's interesting for me is as well as who's using a quality model, who is who has a need for a quality model in general. So maybe let's start first another short question round. These are 3 questions in a row. First is about if you have a need, if you use, and if you see if they're sufficient or not. Okay, answers are coming in. So as of now, we see, so 16 from 39 participants have answered by now, or 18. So the amount of people who don't have a need by now for a quality model is quite high. So it's 67%. So maybe this is also something we can discuss about later, just to maybe increase awareness and see, hey, there is maybe also a need, and maybe it's kind of the way they use quality models today. Then, yeah, it's pretty much the same. Do you already use quality models? 33% say yes, 67% say no. And are these quality models sufficient? So from this 21 answers, only 5% say yes. Hopefully from then they use quality model, and the remaining ones say no or sometimes. So for me, it's quite interesting that especially more than, or at least 2/3 of the people say there is not really a need for them in their daily business for quality models. So maybe coming back to this point, use and need of quality models from an industry aspect. Andrea, you already started to say, hey, safety aspects and other aspects are quite meaningful, at least for your business. Maybe we can elaborate a bit on this topics.
So yes, these are quite important topics from our perspective, as what we see is cybersecurity aspects are increasing in relevance more and more. So the question if our software and our setup is in line with existing rule setups, is in line with addressing privacy aspects, in line with addressing security, especially in this widely arranged setup with multiple providers inside, where we are also working in the FEM community to come up with an idea for the domain, how we can address these quality requirements in a better way to make them visible, domain specific. It's just important, as our customers can be from sensitive infrastructure elements. Just imagine your warehouse as a food distribution warehouse, central one, and it won't work, as availability is not given, as security issues are not given. What is the impact for the environment? What is the impact for the society around? It has a massive impact. Therefore, it's so important to address these quality requirements in an early stage and to make clear who is responsible and to make this visible. And this is where quality models help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think especially for such aspects like security, or even today for accessibility, if you look on let's say social sustainability, for instance, that's getting even more important for society. And I think these aspects, at least if I look back to my projects in the past, they will be quite often forgotten, because everyone is talking about functionality. and not that many people are talking about quality aspects of the solution. And I think there a quality model can help. Martin, what do you think?
Yes, I think, well, many people are not aware about, well, how quality models actually can help them in terms of requirements. And I think there are, well, different stages somehow. So as a, well, very low-hanging fruit, it's particularly when we have a good quality model that we can just use it as a kind of a checklist when eliciting quality requirements. So that we know what kind of quality requirements we have, and not to forget, when we have a quality model that comes with definitions of the characteristics and subcharacteristics that, and we are talking to different stakeholders and also need the shared understanding with the developers, that we know what we are talking about when we are talking about a certain quality and what elements, for example, for usability or for sustainability we want to have, and what that means. I think that is a kind of, well, maybe low-hanging thing. The other thing that is probably also useful for, say, the beginner side or the casual user side is the documentation side, but that would require a bit more elaborate models in terms of that they come with kind of, well, templates, how to document certain qualities, what elements or what techniques there are for example, assessing or measuring certain qualities, etc. That could also be helpful, but that would kind of be, in my view, a little bit of an, say, intermediate use, where you need a little bit more. What we also need, when we talk about, well, we need this, we need that, a standardized model probably never can cover everything, because either it will become too comprehensive, too large, and then it is not useful. People are overwhelmed by it. And on the other hand, if you just concentrate on what you think that everybody will need, then the model will be somehow inadequate for certain application, as well, Andrea had some examples of things that probably in other business are not so important, and other business might have things that are less important in your context, the logistics context, Andrea. So what I think is, what we also need is a kind of, well, tailorability and extensibility of models. And that obviously is a kind of, well, double-sided sword, because when you think of something that should be kind of a standard, then if everybody has its own thing, it's no longer a standard. So I think this is something that academia also should think about and try to contribute, how we can make an extensible standard that still keeps the benefits of things being standardized, but nevertheless allows in the application to, well, put additional things in, or to say, well, this is for us less important, this is for us more important, things like that. So that we find a kind of good balance between being standardized on the one hand side and being, well, adaptable to the needs of the, well, context and of the organizations that are using it.
Yeah, true. Maybe coming one step back to the, because it just hanging on this topic a bit, because many people in this round, as participants said, hey, we don't know quality models, we don't use quality models as of now. So do you have any maybe good examples in projects for using quality models, or some, let's say, bad examples that maybe also there was some kind of issue afterwards when not using this kind of quality models? Just to create this kind of, hey, okay, this is something where this is maybe meaningful to also think of this part of quality models, even as Martin said, using this as a kind of maybe only template to see which aspects or criteria do I have to work on.
Maybe I can pick up the question.
Sure.
So what I see as kind of best practice in general is using different quality models at the same time to get inspiration about required quality issues and combine them context individually. The challenge behind it that we need someone who is reading all these different quality models. We need someone who has the time to dig into this. The other aspect is that there are professional groups as we have them in logistics, professional groups as we have them in computer science, where there is a bigger community behind with similar interests. So instead of doing this independently in your own company, it's also possible to do some adjustments in this bigger group. And what are good and bad examples? So a major issue is just if something like the request for availability information is not visible, then in a big setup where you have more than 5 people involved, who will take care about this? Who ensures that this is built? Who can validate that this is built? So the important part is make it explicit, make it visible to ensure it is in the project. And whenever it's not explicit, there is always the risk to lose it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a similar vein, I would say my adagio has always been that the only bad example regarding quality models is not to use any. So even one not properly or just marginally used is already better than not using anything, because like I said, it gives you a kind of structure. It gives you a reference that you can actually compare to other projects. It gives you the possibility to prioritize what you think is the most important part. And that helps you to introduce things that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to achieve. But I do want to go back to the poll that we did earlier, because I'm absolutely shocked that only 5% said, okay, it worked for me. If I would go to, I don't know, any company, a car dealership or to McDonald's, and I'd ask people, did it satisfy your needs? Did it contain everything you needed? And 5% said yes, and most of them said partially. I would say it's time to go back to the drawing boards. This is something that I'd be very curious about also, maybe in the discussion, to hear from everyone who's said sometimes or no, what they were missing, if they're aware of what was missing, because I have some ideas, some hypotheses. I can share them in a second, maybe, but I would find it very interesting to see what it is that you find missing in your practice about these quality models. Obviously, they've served us well. I mean, even the ISO 25010 standard, I would argue that 15 years ago, it probably wouldn't have this bad of a result. I think more people would have said it served my need now, but now in 2024, I think they just missed the boat on updating it. And I completely agree with what Martin has been saying about that we need to have something that reflects the status quo. And I think this adaptability of a quality model is very crucial.
To maybe ask the participants, what are they missing? So just meanwhile prepare something. So here you can just simply enter the criteria in your sentence, whatever, to just see. We have some kind of word cloud afterwards to see what is the major aspect.
I think one interesting aspect is also the group. we have a group where I see some names I know from an academia context. So how many industry participants do we really have on the call that use these models or want to use them?
Sustainability is coming, simplicity, for instance, tailorability. So maybe we can discuss a bit on criteria of a quality model.
Well, what I would at least like to say is that I see two trends currently, and that especially affects industry. One comes from the industry itself. We can see that systems are growing more complex by the day. Regardless of how you call it, whether you call it metaverse, digital twin, digital ecosystems, systems of systems, anything goes, Internet of Things. I think these old models do not account for the fact that these are very context dependent. So in addition to looking at product quality and in addition to looking at the quality in use, you also have the rest of the context. You have the organization or organizations within it, which it's being used. You have the processes within which it is being used, which are all different types of qualities. And you have the data, which no longer is within the system itself, but often somewhere sent between different components of that system. So you also have the data quality. So in our quality model, we actually have 5 dimensions in total, which are exactly those 5. And the other part is more coming from outside of the companies, which is that there are these new types, including the sustainability that's also being provided here, but also other, like I would say, soft or cross-cutting or otherwise emerging qualities, explainability, values of users and of corporate values, and of course privacy and safety that are imposed either by law or by people like our society, who requires to get measures to assure privacy or to assure safety or to provide explainability of AI applications. And so I think these two developments have a major impact, and is exactly that what drives the need to have this kind of adaptability of those quality models.
There was one point from Winton. So they're using a kind of, let's say, internally developed standard for quality of deliverables. And I think that's probably what many companies do, that they have their own idea of kind of quality models. Maybe the roots are coming from the ISO model. And so they have probably, or many companies have developed their own kind of templates, checklists, and so on. They are going through just to somehow make clear that nothing is somehow missed in the documentation of requirements, especially with respect to quality. So I'm not sure, Andrea, do you use your own, let's say, kind of models, or are they more related to standards?
It's a challenging question at the end. So as I'm always in touch with requirement engineering research. I am inspired by what is done in the academia environment. I'm inspired by existing standards in requirement engineering. And whenever I see a gap in what we have, I address this gap. I believe that there is a big benefit in using existing standards as provided from researchers, as they have the chance to look deeply into a topic, while we in industry need to have something that just works. We most of the time don't have the time to dig this deep to find something. So if we get an inspiration by something that exists, it will help us. And yes, we adapt it. So what we have currently is a mix out of multiple standards from a lot of papers, people, models, frameworks in our community, and of the thoughts, ideas, and best practices inside of our company and inside of our domain.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think when you introduce this kind of quality model in your companies, what were the main hassles, main obstacles you have faced, or maybe others already have faced?
I think the main issue is to underestimate change processes. So first of all, this is a change process. Any change process goes along with fears. Any change process needs a reason behind that people can understand, a value that can be provided by this. As long as you don't have this, you will always face resistance, and you can teach them whatever you like. The model can be as good as you like. It will not be used. So the important part in my industry is really to understand our processes, to understand where we have maybe the most pain points that we can first address with introducing the model. Also looking to the process, as there is not one group working with quality requirements, but I can say for us, there are 10 groups on different levels working with quality requirements. So find the one that is most suitable to do the transition step and to show others that this is of value, to show others that are using their deliverables later on. Martin mentioned before guidance for documentation, for example. So if the model provides a good documentation at the end, as there was guidance in place, makes this visible, gets a buy-in that more and more people can join and roll it out stepwise. Don't try to run it in a big bang setup.
Eddy, do you have some experience in certain projects?
I completely agree with that. It needs to have added value, and that needs to be seen. So as I said at the beginning, what I saw in different projects is that what these quality models do is that they provide structure, they provide focus, and they provide support. And that is a major factor. If you understand that, and even the effort you have to invest in implementing this kind of structure or this change, then that at the end of the day you have better results. That makes a huge difference. We once did a review, an inspection of a huge software engineering project, and they just wanted to get our feedback on how well they've done. And they've been using quality models as rigidly as you could imagine, and that was a perfect example of how you can do good engineering. So using it even for me as a reader, it helps me understand why did they structure things like that and how does it work. And it also helped me to assess how complete that documentation is. The only problem that I see, though, is that there's just still too little guidance. You know, there are many of these structures, like these are the characteristics, these are the sub-characteristics. But how can I assure that if I created a requirement for time behavior, that it is good? So we need to have criteria to check it, and that's something I'm working on. But we also need more templates, not just document templates like this. In this chapter, you put your performance requirements, but also how do I create a good quality requirement for this particular quality. There have been some efforts to suggest patterns, but some of those only were linked to specific qualities. And I think there's still a long way to go to give that kind of support. So there is value that it can actually be communicated quite clearly, but I think it would be so much more helpful if there's more guidance to practically do it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I would like to add also the shared understanding issue to your list, Eddy. I think this is a benefit that you already get from rather simple models, as long as they actually come with definitions of the characteristics and subcharacteristics, so that people in the project know what they are speaking about. And then I fully agree, the more intense you want to use these kinds of models, the better you are off when you get something, that adds examples, guidance, how to express this, how to measure that, etc.
I think there is another point. As Eddy, you mentioned structure, and models are a structure. We are computer scientists. We are a group of people who also is interested in research, so more structure related. We have a lot of hands-on people in industry, people that just want to do it. So the structure is sometimes even blocking that they can access what is really needed. So they need really something to see, oh, it's working, try it out, it's working. And this is a challenge to how to document a quality model in an appropriate way that it is accessible for the audience that we want to address with it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think here it's the same. So this needs to be accessible for people who really need to use it, and they need to understand it, and they need to be, let's say, they have to feel happy when using it because it has to support them at the end. When coming to existing quality models like ISO, etc. So what are you missing in this models in terms of scope or support that we just have discussed in, let's say, giving some kind of guidance, giving a, let's say, easy to understand and easy to use structure?
Yeah, well, I think that existing models, and this is particularly the ISO model, the 25010, and also the model that IREB provides, they are, to some extent, flawed about, how they structure the quality elements and how they guide you to use it. There is, particularly in the ISO model, there is a lot of valuable detailed things. For example, for certain characteristics, what could be properties that are measurable, that would be useful for assessing that characteristic. But that said, on the very basic side, where it comes to, which characteristics do we have, which characteristics do matter, I think the current version of 2011 misses the boat. And unfortunately, the revised version, which is more or less in the making, I think last year there was this the poll taking about the draft standard. Probably it will be released somewhere later this year. And the draft is publicly available, and unfortunately, it is not much better than what we have from 2011, and the revision cycles are about 10 years. So when we don't get a big improvement this year or next year, we wait for another 10 years.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything to add from the others, Eddy, Andrea?
I think what you see is that there are no qualities, as far as I know, that are really waning, that are going away. There's just more qualities that are now being added. Like I said, these emergent ones that weren't a concern several years ago are becoming increasingly more important. And if these standards don't include them, that's of course a problem. The other part is that some standards, of course, they're basically industry standards for particular domains. Let's say automotive spice. People are used to working with them and they're sort of like a law. Of course, the ISO standard isn't that in a way, but it also doesn't have that that vision in order to be it. So I think in part it is whether you miss something or whether you're able to work with it. It is a question of practice. The more you do, the easier it gets. And I think maybe one of the things that we sort of failed to discuss earlier is that qualities itself, what this structure tries to do is take this complexity or this broad vision of what a system is and how well it should be doing things, and tries to create logical categories in which to put it. So each quality model by default is very ambiguous because some qualities can be very similar. Plus, if we talk about these emergent qualities, what makes it even more difficult is that, for example, we don't know yet what explainability exactly is or what characteristics it consists of. There's some research work going on in that field, but we don't have a good grasp of it yet, or at least those that I know don't. And for sustainability, that's even a bigger problem, because I think sustainability is a combination of being a constraint. It has to be sustainable, so whatever decision you take, it'll constrain how it's being used. It could be a quality characteristic that can be measured, like for example the CO2 consumption, or you could also say it's a value because for us as society it's important, or for me as a consumer it's important. So we still don't know exactly what sustainability is, or if sustainability is actually a multitude of different things, and that makes it very difficult to say what is good. And of course, if you then talk to different domains, I think the example that Andrea gave about how it works in her production domain, if you ask someone from a completely different domain, it'll be different. So that makes it very complex and very varied according to what people you are talking to in industry.
Completely agree. Yes, sure.
To missing aspects. So on the one hand, there are specific quality requirements that are missing. I think most of them were already mentioned on a high level, and we will find more if we dig deeper. But on the other hand, we had the topic of applicability. I find it quite rare to find frameworks, requirement frameworks, or quality models for requirement engineering that give a good example how to apply it, or that provide good guidance in this area. I like the example of Volere, as they have a lot of details inside that really help applicability, while other models are very systematic written, just describing what needs to be inside without any guidance. Also similar to the former MIL standard 498, which is outdated since a long time, but it contains a long list of what explicitly need to be inside, so it's very useful. And so therefore, I think beside the specific quality aspects, also what is needed for applicability.
Mm.
I think this is a good hint, especially when thinking of a new kind of quality model that's covering this topic that's also somehow extendable or extended by, let's say, topics that are needed for building this our digital world. And I think one aspect is for sure that we have some kind of modular model that is somehow can be adapted and where things can be put out and just be plugged in. And in addition, what was mentioned by you, Andrea, I think applicability. So this is really can be used by people outside, because otherwise it's a bit somehow also not usable for these people. So what's your recommendation when looking for applying quality models. So what would you recommend for, let's say, a new quality model? But what should be especially be in there in kinds of whatever attributes or in kind of applicability?
Yeah, well, with respect to the characteristics, there is a paper out by a group of particularly IREB people, where we thought about how kind of requirements adapted quality model could look, basically on the level of characteristics and subcharacteristics. But that needs to be, well, further work done. Maybe you can share at some point the link to that paper. It's publicly available. From the was presented last fall in the Reframe workshop in Hanover. And maybe we should also say that we, time permitting, from the IREB side, are planning to do follow-up work there. And one of the follow-up things will be that we try to a bit more systematically, well, figure out what the requirements, what the needs in industry are. So we might at some point, well, approach you as audience here with something like a survey, where we are trying to get some, well, empirical data in what direction a new quality model should go, and what IREB actually, well, should or could contribute for, well, improving the situation.
Yeah, exactly. So for that, I already asked during the registration if we are allowed to use the email. So for everyone who's allowed us to use this email, I will at least ask if they are interested in doing this kind of review or being part of this survey. But meanwhile, I've also shared the link to the paper you've mentioned, Martin, and what I also would like in the end to know from you as participants. So now we have talked a lot about quality models, the use of quality models, how to introduce quality models, and so on. And especially as you have mentioned that you are not using quality models by now in your daily work. So what would be interesting for me, just looking back after this session, do you think that quality models somehow can help your daily work? So just prepare a short question on that. So maybe you can leave your answer. So now we have 11 responses. I hope that are not the same. That's it's the very beginning who told us, yes, I'm using already quality models. So don't be shy, just click yes or no, doesn't matter. I don't know who's clicking what. So it's not traceable at the end. Just for us to get a better understanding if you think now that quality models might be useful for you also in your daily work when defining requirements and talking about requirements, and also when thinking about requirements and elaborating requirements with others. Okay, it seems that at least 93% from 16 people who have answered by now say yes, they think that quality models can help in their daily work. I think this is a good sign in my point of view. And yeah, I really enjoyed the discussion. So sometimes I think maybe we went through certain topics about criteria of quality models, using quality models, what are the examples of quality models, and also I think the applicability of quality models. And so for me, this was quite interesting. And so hope you enjoyed this as well, you as panelists and also the participants. And I would like to stay in contact with you. As already mentioned, I will at least share the recording by end of next week. So the link with the recording. And for all of you who have allowed us to be contacted by email, we will probably come back to you with a survey or with some questions for the quality model that we are working on. So if you are then interested, just raise your hand or write an email back to me, and we can hold you in our loop and keep you updated on the work we are doing in this area. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for being our guest. Hope you enjoyed our roundtable, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yeah, thanks also from my side.
Yeah, thank you, and have a nice day.